by the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad
Namaste.
Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj. We are here reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Namaste, Dr. Suhu. Namaste, Dr. Srinivas. So
Namaste.
We're here reading.
Dandavad.
Namaste, Dandavad. Srinivasan sir. Namaste, Dandavad. Maharaj.
Today we're reading the Catuḥ-ślokī. It's the essence, actually, of the whole Bhagavatam, where Lord Brahma is inquiring very specific questions from Lord Vishnu. This is before Lord Brahma creates the cosmic manifestation. And Lord Vishnu gives, in these 4 shlokas, very nice, essential answers to Lord Brahma. So it's very auspicious to be reading this in your association today. So this is Canto 2, Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 9, Text 32. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yavannaham yato bhavo yarupa guna karmaka tathaiva tattva vijnanam astu te mad anugrahat. All of me, namely my actual eternal form and my transcendental existence, color, qualities, and activities, let all be awakened within you by factual realization out of my causeless mercy. Purport. The secret of success in understanding the intricacies of knowledge of the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is the causeless mercy of the Lord. Even in the material world, the father of many sons discloses the secret of his position to the pet sons. The father discloses the confidence unto the son whom he thinks worthy. An important man in the social order can be known by his mercy only. Similarly, one must be very dear to the Lord in order to know the Lord. The Lord is unlimited. No one can know him completely. But one's advancement in transcendental loving service of the Lord can make one eligible to know the Lord. Here we can see that the Lord is sufficiently pleased with Brahmaji, and therefore he offers his causeless mercy to him, so that Brahmaji may have the factual realization of the Lord by his mercy only. In the Vedas, also it is said that a person cannot know the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, simply by dint of mundane education or intellectual gymnastics. One can know the supreme truth if one has unflinching faith in the bona fide spiritual master, as well as in the Lord. Such a faithful person, even though illiterate in mundane sense, can know the Lord automatically by the mercy of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita also it is said that the Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to everyone, and he keeps himself concealed from the faithless by his yoga maya potency. To the faithful, the Lord reveals himself in his form, quality, and pastimes. The Lord is not formless, as wrongly conceived by the impersonalist, but his form is not like one that we have experienced. Dandavad Pranam Madhu Gopal Prabhu. The Lord discloses the transcendental nature. The Lord discloses his form, even to the extent of measurement, to his pure devotees, and that is the meaning of Yavan, as explained by Srila Jiva Goswami, the greatest scholar of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The Lord discloses the transcendental nature of his existence. The mundane wranglers make mundane conceptions of the form of the Lord, It is said in the revealed scriptures that the Lord has no mundane form. Therefore, persons with a poor fund of knowledge conclude that he must be formless. They cannot distinguish between the mundane form and the spiritual form. According to them, without a mundane form, one must be formless. This conclusion is also mundane because formlessness is the opposite conception of form. Negation of the mundane conception does not establish a transcendental fact. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that the Lord has a transcendental form and that he can utilize any one of his senses for any purpose. For example, he can eat with his eyes, he can see with his legs. In the mundane conception of form, one cannot eat with one's eyes or see with his leg. That is the difference between mundane body and spiritual body of Satchidananda. A spiritual body is not formless. It is a different type of body of which we cannot conceive with our present mundane senses. Formless, therefore, means devoid of mundane form or possessing a spiritual body of which the non-devotee can have no conception by the speculative method. The Lord discloses to the devotee his unlimited varieties of transcendental bodies, all identical with one another, with different kinds of bodily features. Some of the transcendental bodies of the Lord are blackish, and some of them are whitish, some of them are reddish, some are yellowish. Some of them are four-handed and some of them are two-handed. Some of them are like fish, some of them are like a lion. All these different transcendental bodies of the Lord, without any differential category, are disclosed to the devotees of the Lord by the mercy of the Lord. And thus the impersonalists' false arguments claim the formlessness of the Supreme Truth do not appeal to a devotee of the Lord, even though such a devotee may not be very advanced in devotional service. The Lord has unlimited numbers of transcendental qualities, and one of them is his affection for his unalloyed devotee. In the history of the mundane world, we can appreciate his transcendental qualities. The Lord incarnates himself for the protection of his devotees and for the annihilation of the faithless. His activities are in relationship with his devotees. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is full of such activities of the Lord in relationship with his devotees, and the non-devotees have no knowledge of such pastimes. The Lord lifted Govardhan Hill when he was only 7 years old and protected his pure devotees at Vrindavan from the wrath of Indra, who was overflooding the place with rain. Now this lifting of Govardhan Hill by a 7-year-old boy may be unbelievable for the faithless, but for the devotees it is absolutely believable. The devotee believes in the almighty potency of the Lord, while the faithless say that the Lord is almighty, but do not believe it. Such men with a poor fund of knowledge do not know that the Lord is the Lord eternally, and that one cannot become the Lord by meditation for millions of years, or by mental speculation for billions of years. The impersonal interpretation of mundane wranglers is completely refuted in this verse, because it is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord has qualities, form, pastimes, and everything that a person has. All these descriptions of the transcendental nature of the personality of Godhead are factual realizations by the devotee of the Lord. And by the causeless mercy of the Lord, they are revealed to his pure devotee and to no one else. Text 33. Aham eva sam eva gre, nanyad yatsad asat param, paschadaham yad etachcha, yovashisheta somsmyaham. Brahma, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there is nothing but myself, nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead, and after annihilation, what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. Purport. We should note very carefully that the personality of Godhead is addressing Lord Brahma and specifying with great emphasis himself, pointing out that it is he, the personality of Godhead, who existed before the creation. It is he only who maintains the creation, and it is he only who remains after the annihilation of the creation. Brahma is also a creation of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist puts forth the theory of oneness in the sense that Brahma, also being the same principle of I, because he is an emanation from the I, the absolute truth, is identical with the Lord, the principle of I, and that there is thus nothing more than the principle of I, is explained in this verse. Accepting the argument of the impersonalist, it is to be admitted that the Lord is the creator I, and that Brahma is the created I. Therefore, there is a difference between the two I's, namely the predominator and the predominated I. Therefore, there are still two I's, even accepting the argument of the impersonalist. But we must note carefully that these two I's are accepted in the Vedic literature, in the Catuḥ-Upanishad, in the sense of quality. The Catuḥ-Upanishad says, Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitanam eko bahunam yo vidhati kaman. The creator I and the created I are both accepted in the Vedas as qualitatively one, because both of them are nityas and chaitanas. But the singular I is the creator I, and the created I's are of a plural number because there are many I's like Brahma and those generated by Brahma. It is the simple truth. The father creates or begets a son, and the son also creates many other sons. And all of them may be one as human beings, but at the same time, from the father, the son and the grandsons are all different. The son cannot take the place of the father, nor can the grandsons. Simultaneously, the father, the son, and the grandson are one and different also. As human beings, they are one, but as relatives, they are different. Therefore, the relatives of the creator and the created, or the predominator and the predominated, have been differentiated in the Vedas by saying that the predominator I is the feeder of the predominated I's. And thus there is a vast difference between the two principles of I. In another feature of this verse, no one can deny the personalities of both Lord Brahma, no one can deny the personalities of both the Lord and Brahma. Therefore, in the ultimate issue, both the predominator and the predominated are persons. This conclusion refutes the conclusion of the impersonalist, and in the ultimate issue, everything is impersonal. This impersonal feature stressed by the less intelligent impersonalist school is refuted by pointing out that the predominator I is the absolute truth, and that he is a person. The predominated I, Brahma, is also a person, but he is not the absolute. For realization of one's self in spiritual psychology, it may be convenient to assume oneself to be the same principle as the absolute truth, but there is always the difference of the predominated and the predominator, as clearly pointed out here in this verse, which is grossly misused by the impersonalists. Brahma is factually seeing face to face his predominator Lord, who exists in his transcendental eternal form even after the annihilation of the material creation. The form of the Lord as seen by Brahma existed before the creation of Brahma, and the material manifestation with all the ingredients and agents of material creation are also energetic expansions of the Lord. And after the exhibition of the Lord's energy comes to a close, what remains is the same personality of Godhead. Therefore, the form of the Lord exists in all circumstances of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. The Vedic hymns confirm this fact in the statement, Vasudevo va idam agra asin na Brahma, na cha Shankara eko Narayana, asin na Brahma neshana, etc. Before the creation, there was none except Vasudeva. There was neither Brahma nor Shankara. Only Narayan was there and no one else, neither Brahma nor Ishana. Sripad Shankaracharya also confirms in his comments on Bhagavad Gita that Narayan, or the personality of Godhead, is transcendental to all creation, but that the whole creation is the product of avyakta. Therefore, the difference between the created and the creator is always there, although both the creator and the created are of the same quality. This ends our reading for today. This purport does continue, but we'll pick it up on Monday. These purports will be very long because the Catuḥ-ślokī is very important, and Prabhupada is giving us a lot of insight into what these shlokas are saying. Are there any comments or questions from anybody?
I have a doubt, not a question you can say, but I have also observation and question also, because you have said very rightly that it is very carefully we have to understand the creator and created. Okay, and very clearly said that in the beginning the creator was the Narayan or Vishnu, if I properly understood, and then he has created this world, and we all are the you can say that a devotee or the disciples of the God. Okay, and but there is a problem in that. My understanding goes like in Vedic tradition, especially with the Shruti tradition. When we talk about the theory of creation and creator kind of things in the Madhya-līlā Veda, so there are some statements when we teach philosophically that nothing was there. Okay, but when it comes to the, probably I understood this way, probably when it comes to the Smriti tradition, and which is also very significant, and Vishnu Purāna, all Puranic traditions, and there maybe we can talk about a theory of creation or creator created by this world is whole consciousness is being created by the absolute reality, or the Vishnu or the Narayan being created by, when it comes to Smriti tradition. But when it comes to Shruti tradition, there is no such statement. Like, I need a clarification there. So what do you have to say regarding this?
So first, what was just said here is that Lord Brahma is the creator of the material universe, right? And he is coming from Vishnu. So not that Vishnu is coming to create the material world directly. He is only giving birth to Brahma, who is the first living entity in the material creation. And then Lord Brahma, through using the Lord's power, is then creating everything, right? So that clarification is there. And then what was said is that before the material creation, throughout the material creation, and after the annihilation of the material creation, Narayan is there. So now what is talked about in the Shruti traditions about there being nothing in the beginning, that is sounding like that is the beginning of the material creation, right? Lord Brahma finds himself in nothing, right? He is in nothing. He has not created anything yet. He's not even experiencing the Lord who gave birth to him. He is just by himself, right? We read this a couple of verses ago. And then he's very distraught about that. Lord Brahma is in nothing. Nothing is there. It's just him. It's just his own awareness of himself with no idea of where he came from or what he's supposed to do. And he's very distraught about this. And then finally, this drives him to meditate upon himself. And then he hears the vibration, basically like, what is it? What is the word that is he hears? He hears the word basically tapa. Tapa, he hears, right? Is austerity. So he just hears the sound vibration, and then through that informing his meditation, then he's able to perceive the Lord through his meditation, right? And then from that, then he is having the potency to create the material world. So that nothingness is talking about the beginning of the material creation, which Brahma finds himself in. But this verse is saying Narayan is coming even before the material creation.
I would like to add one point here. that when we said nothingness, nothingness is not a sense of nihilism or void. It can be, has the power of everything. It could be it is the nothingness is indescribable. Something which is you cannot describe in terms of language. Yes, that is the creation of the Brahma or absolute, the Narayan. You can say that has created, as you said very rightly. Yes, it's nothingness is not nihilism as it is understood by Western philosophers or something. It's not a kind of void, but it is something which is has many meanings, and something which is very energetic, and something which is very vibrant, and something which is has the power of kind of creation, everything. And there comes the Narayan and the Vishnu. Just would like to.
Well, I mean, Narayan is not coming from nothingness. What is being said is that nothingness refers to no material things. The verse is saying very clearly that the spiritual variegatedness, Satchidananda, of the spiritual world is eternally existing. The Lord in his personal form with his associates, paraphernalia, is eternally existing. That's not nothingness. That is everything in a very concrete, eternal Satchidananda, eternally conscious, eternally blissful form, which is constantly renewing itself, right? So that's not nothingness. The nothingness is referring to what is there. There's no material creation yet. And then after that meditation, then Lord Brahma is able to do the creation. That's what's being said here. But I think there's very much, in popular culture, there's kind of this romantic idea of nothingness as meaning all spiritual world, but that's a little nonsensical. The Vedas are very clearly saying, Satchidananda, the personality of Godhead, the Bhagavan, right? We have Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. And when we're talking about Bhagavan, we're talking also about predominator and predominated, right? So it's not, the Lord is not just there by himself, but the Lord automatically means that which he lords over, the paraphernalia, the devotees, and the pastimes among the devotees and the Lord and the paraphernalia. And that is eternally existing. That's what Veda is giving us. So we should not confuse that for nothingness,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello. Pranam Swamiji. Hello.
Dr. Srinivasan, pranams. Nice to see you.
Yes, pranams. No, thank you. Hari Om Dandavat pranams. While speaking about the course of this, this discourse, I just noticed that there is a distinct difference between the mundane bodies and the spiritual bodies. My question is, the mundane bodies are possible in the gross level, and then the mundane bodies migrate to certain level and then to the causal level. From the causal level, it goes to Kaivalya to Vaikuntha or Brahmaloka. From there, after enjoying this, whether they will take the form of life and birth, or else they will merge with the Brahma called Narayana or Mahavishnu or Vaikuntha. Could you please clarify, how could there be a difference when there are no, names and forms for the causal body, and that you have mentioned about various names and sizes? This is what is perplexing me now.
Yeah, so the different kinds of bodies are based on the inherent desires of the soul. Right? The soul is eternal. We're learning this in Bhagavad Gita. And the soul, the finite soul, is Tatastha Shakti, right? This middle energy of Bhagavan. Right? We have Antaranga Shakti, the internal potency of Bhagavan, where he is having pastimes, loving pastimes with his devotees, paraphernalia. Then there is this Tatastha Shakti, where the finite souls are ontologically existing. And then you have the Bahiranga Shakti, the external potency, which is Maya, essentially. But, Maya is the energy of the Lord still, it's still an aspect of the Lord, but it's external to the central desires of the Lord. It's there to serve the purposes of the finite souls who don't want to engage in devotion. So the Tatastha Shakti is marginal potency, so they can either decide to dedicate their free will to the purposes of the Lord and service, loving devotional service, and then they are partaking in activities with their constitutional body of Satchidananda, which is not material, which is not Tanmatra and the Panchamahabhuta. That is not there in the Antaranga Shakti. But if the souls at the marginal potency, if they decide, no, we don't want to engage in that, we want to only have self-centered desires, we want to experience lust and anger and happiness for ourselves, self-centered happiness, all these things, then they're engaged in the external potency. And now that is where we are getting bodies of the material nature based on what is our desire. Then we can come in the form of any living entity, of a tree, an insect, an animal, a human. And based on our karma, right, then we're going through many lives, many lifetimes, and doing different exploitive activities. And then at the end of one lifetime, based on whatever our specific karma is, and the last thing that we're remembering upon leaving the body, then the next body in the external energy, we're still in the Bahiranga Shakti, the external energy, then we're getting a body based on our karma and based on what our consciousness is fixed upon. So we can exploit more and more. So the main thing is that the different bodies are coming from the desire of the soul. It's coming from the Lord's will, in order, because the Lord is having love for all the souls, even those souls who are not choosing to engage in devotional activities. Even they want to have self-centered activities, the Lord is still loving them, but they're not having a direct relationship. So by the potency of his external energy, their desires are being fulfilled, but that is the plane of birth and death, right? That is Mritya-loka, right? Where we're always meeting death, and anything that we're working for in the material life, we can't bring with us to the next life. So this is a perpetual suffering. And the idea is that eventually the soul can, develop some sukriti and can develop some desire to engage in its constitutional activity in conscious, loving service to the Lord. And then the body of karma is leaving, actually, and we're being re-engaged in that Satchidananda, this eternal existence of full consciousness and a very blissful experience. Right? That is the idea. Is that okay, Dr. Srinivas?
Okay. I am still not, clear about that version of the spiritual bodies, because you said about the desire of the soul. Once the soul migrates from the body to the causal level and achieve the Kaivalya, it is called as the nature of self, which is indefatigable and indomitable. It is formless, tasteless, and no desires, no vasanas, and no karmas. So how can there be a desire for a soul when it leaves this body to the causal nature to reach the Vaikuntha?
Yes, Kaivalya is meaning, that is renunciation, right? So renunciation can only lead to Brahman. In this, that's still self-centered desire. We no longer want to be having the karmic reaction of the exploitive plane, but we have no attraction for devotional service in the plane of dedication. So we're just rejecting everything, and we're taking renunciation, Kaivalya. We're trying to merge into the existence of God to enjoy that for ourselves. And that is what is described as formless, tasteless, all these things. That is Brahman, the Brahman effulgence. But the soul, the finite soul, is by its nature, is active. So it cannot maintain this position of inactivity in Brahman eternally. That is why when the souls who do reach this level of Kaivalya, this impersonal liberation and merging with Brahman, after some time, however long, they are falling down back to the material world. They may be coming as a very pious individual, as a philanthropist or something, but eventually they fall back down to the plane of exploitation, to material world, because the soul cannot maintain inactivity. The soul, by its inherent nature, is active. And by striving to practice renunciation, by striving for this impersonal Brahman liberation, that is still self-centered. Still the soul has not learned the lesson of selfless activity, of selfless service to the Lord, to Bhagavan. So this Kaivalya is not a permanent solution. That is the main thing.
One more point, but still, if the soul has a desire, it conveys that the meaning of avidya. How do you interpret it?
Say that again, please.
No, when the soul has a feeling of desire, that means still avidya is permeating the soul. How to eliminate this avidya there?
No, right. So vidya is meaning, right, wisdom, to see. Vid means to see. So this wisdom is to actually see what is the spiritual reality. So avidya, ignorance. Ignorance and having desire are not the same thing. Having material desire, that is avidya, that is ignorance. When we want to have desire for our own satisfaction, that's avidya. But to have vidya means we still have desire, but that desire is to serve the Lord, is to use everything. We were in this life and we have so many things around us. Good. Use everything around you, all your resources, all of your personal qualities, everything. Use that in the plane of dedication to serve the devotees, to serve the Lord. And then we're still having desire, and it's being engaged in a very positive way in spiritual progress. And that is how we can have vidya. That is real vidya.
Okay, thank you. Dandavat pranams.
Dandavat pranams. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham, Nishringapuri Dham, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. All glories to the worldwide devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, Sama Bhakti Veda Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. Scientific Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. Jai Princeton Bhakti Vedānta Institute Ki Jai. Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Institute Ki Jai.
मैं अभी आपको कॉल बैक कर रही हूँ. कॉल बैक.
Nitai Gaur Pramanandi. Hari 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 Bol. Dandavat pranams.
Dandavat pranam. Dandavat.
Namaste, Dandavat pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 2, the Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 9, Text 33. So this is the first shloka of the Catuḥ-ślokī of Bhāgavatam, which we started last Friday, and now we are continuing the purport by Srila Prabhupada. The other feature of the statement is that the supreme truth is Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead. The personality of Godhead and his kingdom have already been explained. The kingdom of Godhead is not void as conceived by the impersonalists. The Vaikuntha planets are full of transcendental variegatedness, including the four-handed residents of those planets, with great opulence of wealth and prosperity. And there are even airplanes and other amenities required for high-grade personalities. Therefore, the personality of Godhead exists before the creation, and he exists with all transcendental variegatedness in the Vaikuntha lokas. The Vaikuntha lokas also accepted in Bhagavad Gita as being of the Sanatana nature, are not annihilated even after the annihilation of the manifested cosmos. Those transcendental planets are of a different nature altogether, and that nature is not subjected to the rules and regulations of material creation, maintenance, or annihilation. The existence of the personality of Godhead implies the existence of the Vaikuntha lokas, as the existence of a king implies the existence of a kingdom, In various places in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and in other revealed scriptures, the existence of the personality of Godhead is mentioned. For example, in Bhagavatam 2.8.10, Maharaj Parikshit asks, Sachapiyatra Purusho Vishvastityudha Muktavatmam Mayam Mehesha Site Sarva Guhashaya. How does the personality of Godhead, the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, who is always freed from the influence of the illusory energy and is the controller of the same, lie in everyone's heart? Similar also is a question of Viduras in Bhagavatam 3.7.37. Tadvanam Bhagavam Stesham Katida Pratishankrama Tatremam Ka Upasiran Cha Usvid Anusaryate. Sridhar Swami explains this in his notes. During the annihilation of the creation, who serves the Lord lying on the Sesha, etc. This means that the transcendental Lord, with all his name, fame, quality, and paraphernalia, exists eternally. The same confirmation is also in the Kasi-kand of the Skanda Purāna, in connection with Dhruva Charita. It is said there, Nasyavante piyad bhakta mahatyam pralayad padi atochuto kile loke saeka sarva govyaya. Even the devotees of the personality of Godhead are not annihilated during the period of the entire annihilation of the material world, not to speak of the Lord himself. The Lord is ever existent in all three stages of material change. The impersonalist adduces no activity in the Supreme, but in this discussion between Brahma and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord is said to have activities also. As he is his form and quality. The activities of Brahma and other demigods during the maintenance of the creation are to be understood as the activities of the Lord. The king or the head executive of a state may not be seen in the government offices, for he may be engaged in royal comforts. Yet it should be understood that everything is being done under his direction, and everything is at his command. The personality of Godhead is never formless. In the material world, he may not be visible in his personal form to the less intelligent class of men, and therefore he may sometimes be called formless. But actually he is always in his eternal form as in his Vaikuntha planets, as well as in other planets of the universes, as different incarnations. The example of the sun is very appropriate in this connection. The sun in the night sky may not be visible to the eyes of men in the darkness, but the sun is visible wherever it has risen. That the sun is not visible to the eyes of the inhabitants of a particular part of the earth does not mean that the sun has no form. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 1.4.1, there is the hymn, Atmaya Vedham Agra Asit Purusha Vidhaha. This mantra indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, even before the appearance of the Purusha incarnation. In Bhagavad Gita 15.18, it is said that Lord Krishna is Purushottama, because he is the Supreme Purusha, transcendental even to the Purushakshara and the Purushakshara. The Akshara Purusha, or the Mahavishnu, throws his glance over Prakriti, or material nature, but the Purushottam existed even before that. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad therefore confirms the statement of the Bhagavad Gita that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Person, Purushottama. In some of the Vedas, it is also said that in the beginning only the impersonal Brahman existed. However, according to this verse, the impersonal Brahman, which is the glowing effulgence of the body of the Supreme Lord, may be called the immediate cause, but the cause of all causes, or the remote cause, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord's impersonal feature is existent in the material world because by material senses or material eyes, the Lord cannot be seen or perceived. One has to spiritualize the senses before one can expect to see or perceive the Supreme Lord. But he is always engaged in his personal capacity, and he is eternally visible to the inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka face to face. Therefore, he is materially impersonal, just as the executive head of the state may be impersonal in the government offices, although he is not impersonal in the government house. Similarly, the Lord is not impersonal in his abode, which is always nirasta kuhakam, as stated in the very beginning of Bhāgavatam. Therefore, both the impersonal and personal features of the Lord are acceptable, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures. This personality of Godhead is very emphatically explained in Bhagavad Gita in connection with the verse Brahmano hi pratistaham, Bhagavad Gita 14.27. Therefore, in all ways, the confidential part of spiritual knowledge is realization of the personality of Godhead, and not his impersonal Brahman feature. One should therefore have his ultimate aim of realization not in the impersonal feature, but in the personal feature of the absolute truth. The example of the sky within the pot and the sky outside the pot may be helpful to the student for his realization of the all-pervading quality of the cosmic consciousness of the absolute truth. But that does not mean that the individual part and parcel of the Lord becomes the supreme by a false claim. It means only that the conditioned soul is a victim of the illusory energy in her last snare. To claim to be one with the cosmic consciousness of the Lord is the last trap set by the illusory energy, or Daivi Maya. Even in the impersonal existence of the Lord, as it is in the material creation, one should aspire for personal realization of the Lord, and that is the meaning of paschadaham yad atach chayo vashishyate, so smyaham. Brahmaji also accepted the same truth when he was instructing Narada. In Bhagavatam 2.7.50, he says, So yam yebi hitastata bhagavan vishvabhavana. There is no other cause of all causes than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. Therefore, this verse, Aham Eva, never indicates anything other than the Supreme Lord, and one should therefore follow the path of the Brahma Sampradaya, or the path from Brahmaji to Narada to Vyasadeva, etc., and make it a point in life to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, or Lord Krishna. This is very confidential instruction to the pure devotees of the Lord, was also given to Arjuna and to Brahma in the beginning of the creation. The demigods like Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshvar, Indra, Chandra, and Varuna are undoubtedly different forms of the Lord for execution of different functions. The different elemental ingredients of the material creation, as well as the multifarious energies, also may be of the same personality of Godhead, but the root of all of them is the Supreme Personality of God, Śrī Krishna. One should be attached to the root of everything, rather than be bewildered by the branches and leaves. That is the instruction given in this verse. Okay, next verse, the second verse of the Catuḥ-ślokī, verse 2.9.34. Roteratam yat pratyeta na pratyeta chatmani tadvidyad atmano mayam yathabaso yatatama. O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. Purport. In the previous verse, it has already been concluded that in any stage of the cosmic manifestation, its appearance, its sustenance, its growth, its interactions of different energies, its deterioration, and its disappearance, all has its basic relation with the existence of the personality of Godhead. And as such, whenever there is forgetfulness of this prime relation with the Lord, and whenever things are accepted as real without being related to the Lord, that conception is called a product of the illusory energy of the Lord. Because nothing can exist without the Lord, it should be known that the illusory energy is also an energy of the Lord. The right conclusion of dovetailing everything in relationship with the Lord is called Yoga Maya, or the energy of union. And the wrong conception of detaching a thing from its relationship with the Lord is called the Lord's Daivi Maya, or Mahamaya. Both the Mayas also have connections with the Lord because nothing can exist without being related to him. As such, the wrong conception of detaching relationships from the Lord is not false, but illusory. Misconceiving one thing for another thing is called illusion. For example, accepting a rope as a snake is illusion, but the rope is not false. The rope, as it exists in the front of the illusion person, is not at all false, but the acceptance is illusory. Therefore, the wrong conception of accepting the material manifestation as being divorced from the energy of the Lord is an illusion, but it is not false. And this illusory conception is called the reflection of the reality in the darkness of ignorance. Anything that appears as apparently not being produced out of my energy, meaning the Lord's energy, is called Maya. The conception that the living entity is formless or that the Supreme Lord is formless is also illusion. In Bhagavad Gita 2.12, it was said by the Lord in the midst of the battlefield that the warriors standing in front of Arjuna himself, and even the Lord had all existed before. They were existing on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and they would all continue to be individual personalities in the future also, even after the annihilation of the present body, and even after being liberated from the bondage of material existence. In all circumstances, the Lord and the living entities are individual personalities, and the personal features of both the Lord and the living beings are never abolished. Only the influence of the illusory energy, the reflection of light in darkness, can, by the mercy of the Lord, be removed. In the material world, the light of the sun is also not independent, nor is that of the moon. The real source of light is the Brahmajyoti, which diffuses light from the transcendental body of the Lord, and at the same time is reflected in varieties of light. The light of the sun, the light of the moon, the light of fire, or the light of electricity. So the identity of the self as being unconnected with the Supreme Self, the Lord, is also an illusion, and the false claim that I am the Supreme is the last illusory snare of the same Maya, or the external energy of the Lord. So we'll stop here for today, and we'll continue the purport on Friday. Before we conclude, is there any comments, Dr. Suhu?
Yes, no, I always listen to you very carefully, and you have explained the things very properly. So I don't have, but I have little confusion actually. Actually, I just see everything in my perception. Like from the scenes from the childhood, I have faith on God. But when I said faith on God means I have multiple faiths. Like I believe on from the beginning, I believe on Sivji, and I believe on Krishna. I believe on all Sakti also. So I have multiple faiths. I believe on multiple gods. So now is it possible to have the multiple faiths? That is one question. That but as I said, that not a kind of I surrender, but not a kind of detachment, but a kind of living within the family, within the society. Certain kind of responsibility has been given to you, assigned to you, and that is also part of your duties. Is that something is wrong, or something is possible even within the family? You can have a surrender to God, and everything you can do within even the family, like household life.
So first I will respond to the first part. I'm just looking for something here to read, actually. So as far as you're saying, having faith in Lord Shiva and Krishna and multiple gods. First, we have to very clearly understand what is the actual conception behind what is being said. It's not that there are multiple gods, so to speak, right? The idea of God as the supreme absolute truth is, or the supreme being, is that it is not one of many other beings, and it just happens to be that God is the best out of all the others, like the biggest mountain out of all other mountains. That's not what is meant by the absolute or the supreme being. It means that which all other beings derive their essence of being. So God, the absolute truth, is the reservoir of all other beings from which they derive their finite existence. Even if they're very great beings, very powerful beings, still they're finite and they're dependent upon that reservoir of being. So then we have to understand the conceptions from that point of view. So I'm reading here from the Brahma Samhita. I'm going to read just one verse from the Brahma Samhita about Lord Shiva. Basically, Lord Shiva is understood, right, as the best Vaishnava, actually. So here, and this is Brahma Samhita, verse 45. Shiram yatha dadi vikara vishesha yogat sanjayatena hitata pratagasti heto yasambhutam apitata samupaiti karyad govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Just as milk is transformed into curd by the action of acids, but yet the effect curd is neither the same nor different from its cause, i.e. the milk. Similarly, I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Shambhu is transformation for the performance of the work of destruction. So Lord Shiva is a guna avatar, right? The guna avatars are Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, and it's explained in the beginning of Caitanya-caritāmṛta, the whole ontological expansion of the different aspects of that supreme being. So that reservoir of being then expands itself through different energies, the Antaranga Shakti, Tatastha Shakti, Bahiranga Shakti, and also as different avatars and incarnations in personal forms. So in the guna avatars, Lord Shiva is coming for a specific duty. So he's very, very powerful. He's coming to destroy the material creation. But it's saying here that just as curd is formed from milk, you add acid to milk and it makes a yogurt, right? So that yogurt is coming from the milk, is directly coming from that milk. It's basically the same thing as milk, yet still it's different. You can never turn that yogurt back into milk, but still it's coming directly from the milk. So that's Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is like that yogurt, where he is very close to Krishna, actually. We're hearing many times throughout the scriptures, even there's a very pious aspect of Lord Shiva called Sada Shiva, who's actually in Vrindavan and actually has a role in Krishna's Rasa-līlā as Sada Shiva, and as Gopeshwar, even the controller of the gopis. One of Shiva's names is Gopeshwar. So these things hint at the very exalted position of Lord Shiva as a Vaishnava, but still that is a Shakti, not Shaktiman, the supreme being, the absolute. When you refer to God, is the supreme, is the Shaktiman, the controller and source of the energy. And then so all these other demigods like Shiva and Brahma, and actually Shiva is even more than a demigod. He's the demigods are actually Jiva Tattvas. The Lord is Vishnu Tattva. All the devotees and the demigods, They are Jiva Tattvas, but Shiva is actually having his own. He's a Shiva Tattva. He's distinct from even the Jivas and the demigods. But still, he is coming as a Vaishnava. He's still the energy of the Lord. He's Shakti, not Shakti Mam. So then when it comes to our personal devotion, how we are trying to have a proper conception so that when we practice devotion, it is actually leading to the desired result. We see Lord Shiva as a Vaishnava. So just as we give honor to all the Vaishnavas, we give honor to Lord Shiva, of course. But still, the worship of the Supreme Lord, of the source of all energies, of Shakti Mam, that is the higher thing. And that's what's being presented in Bhagavad Gita, also in Bhagavatam here. And so through following that, then we know that in order to get the fruit, or not the fruit, but to get to the desired result of worshiping the Lord, which is love for Krishna, Krishna Prem, we can only do that through serving the bona fide Vaishnava, the bona fide Guru, coming down in Guru Parampara. So we have to dovetail everything within this conception. Not that this is one conception on one hand, and then on the other hand, we have a completely different conception. And so if we had some idea like that, then actually we won't be making any progress at all. And we'll just be kind of stuck within our own thoughts. And there's no way to get out of that except through surrender. So that's what discipline, being a disciple means, to discipline our mind by not just following our own whims, by following our own attractions here or there, going so many directions without any real objective foundation, but subjective, but surrender to that which is outside of ourselves, which is a bona fide authority in this matter of spiritual development, and a bona fide authority of understanding what Veda is presenting, because they have already participated in that process of surrender and hearing and practicing very thoroughly and very sincerely, very humbly, very profoundly. So we have to understand things in that way, I think, as far as that is concerned. And then you have a second part to your question about family life. But do you want to make any comment about what I said there?
Yes, yes, absolutely right. Like very clearly you have said that, and very try to understand both Siva Tattva and Krishna Tattva, or the Lord Vishnu Tattva. So I have to take it in a kind of, as I understood, you mean to say that these two things are not different. Actually, when we go for Krishna Tattva is also the kind of Siva Tattva, you mean to say that?
No, they are different. Definitely,
They are different.
They are different. That's why they are different tattvas. They are different, but Shiva is Shakti. Vishnu is Shakti Mam.
Okay. But at times, even Vishnu also, or Siva, Lord
Sure.
Siva.
Of course,
And
you're right. But we're hearing how Krishna comes to serve his own devotees. So when Vishnu is worshiping Shiva, it's in that kind of mood where the Supreme is coming to worship his own devotee, to serve his own devotee.
see how one can come out of that contradiction, that what I presented. You said everything is that those who are guru and those who are following the path, they have sincerely and devotedly, everything they have surrendered, realized. But a person who is in contradiction, and that how to overcome that contradiction and resolve the contradiction and say that this is one thing which I have to have.
What is the
You understand
contradiction?
what I'm saying? What I'm saying. Suppose, see, I believe in P exists. Also, I believe that P doesn't exist and something else exists. Suppose I believe in, I have faith, strong faith on Siva, and also I have equally strong faith on Vishnu. Okay, and there is a dilemma where you have to go, like whether you have to, like a Arjun's dilemma, that whether you want to choose Vishnu or you want to go with Shiva, Lord Shiva. When it comes to faith is there both places, and that strong faith is there in both places. But is it possible to have both contradiction and go further and do the surrender to God? Or you have to choose one path? So that's my question. Like you have to accept Shiva Tattva, or you have to accept Krishna.
Well, I'm not so sure you're hearing what I'm saying, is that Shiva Tattva is a Shakti.
No, I got it. Yes, it's an energy.
So then if we're understanding that, then we're understanding Shiva as a Vaishnava.
Okay.
And Vishnu is not a Vaishnava. Vishnu is who the Vaishnavas are worshiping.
Okay.
So if you want to follow Lord Shiva, means following a Vaishnava, means following the worship of Lord Vishnu. Shiva is a Vaishnava.
Okay.
So by following the example of Lord Shiva, that means we're still coming to the path of Krishna Bhakti.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for clarifying my doubts, and I'm so grateful. And yes, my sincere regards and gratitude, because you cleared my doubts.
Thank you, Dr. Sahu. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada Srila Guru Maharaj Srila Guru Dev Srila Acharya Dev Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Nishringapoli Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai. Jai Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. All glories to the worldwide devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. Sama Bhaktiveda Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Scientific Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Jai Princeton Bhakti-Vedanta Institute Ki Jai. Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Institute Ki Jai. Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Mat Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanandi. Hari 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 Bo. Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Namaste. Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are here reading Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 9, Text 34, which is the second shloka, the second verse of the Catuḥ-ślokī, which contains the essence of Bhagavatam, these 4 verses which contain the essence of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And we're continuing from Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Vedānta-sūtra, in the very beginning, affirms that everything is born from the Supreme, and thus, as explained in the previous verse, all individual living entities are born from the energy of the Supreme Living Being, the personality of Godhead. Brahma himself was born from the energy of the Lord, and all other living entities are born from the energy of the Lord through the agency of Brahma. None of them has any existence without being dovetailed with the Supreme Lord. The independence of the individual living entity is not real independence, but is just the reflection of the real independence existing in the Supreme Being, the Lord. The false claim of supreme independence by the conditioned souls is illusion, and this conclusion is admitted in this verse. Persons with a poor fund of knowledge become illusioned, and therefore the so-called scientists, physiologists, empiric philosophers, etc., become dazzled by the glaring reflection of the sun, moon, electricity, etc., and deny the existence of the Supreme Lord, putting forward theories and different speculations about the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of everything material. The medical practitioner may deny the existence of the soul in the physiological body construction of an individual person, but he cannot give life to a dead body, even though all the mechanisms of the body exist even after death. The psychologist makes a serious study of the physiological conditions of the brain, as if the construction of the cerebral lump were the machine of the functioning mind. But in the dead body, the psychologist cannot bring back the function of the mind. These scientific studies of the cosmic manifestation, or the bodily construction, independent of the Supreme Lord, are different reflective intellectual gymnastics only. But at the end, they are all illusion and nothing more. All such advancement of science and knowledge in the present context of material civilization is but an action of the covering influence of the illusory energy. The illusory energy has two phases of existence, namely the covering influence and the throwing influence. By the throwing influence, the illusory energy throws the living entities into the darkness of ignorance, and by the covering influence, she covers the eyes of men with a poor fund of knowledge about the existence of the Supreme Person, who enlightened the Supreme Individual Being, Brahma. The identity of Brahma with the Supreme Lord is never claimed herein, and therefore such a foolish claim by the man with a poor fund of knowledge is another display of the illusory energy of the Lord. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 16.18 through 20 that demoniac persons who deny the existence of the Supreme Lord are thrown more and more into the darkness of ignorance, and thus such demoniac persons transmigrate life after life without any knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sane man, however, is enlightened in the disciplic succession from Brahmaji, who was personally instructed by the Lord, or in the disciplic succession from Arjuna, who is personally instructed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita. He accepts this statement of the Lord, Aham sarvasya prabhavo, mata sarvam pravartate, iti matva bhajante mam, Buddha bhava samanditaha. Bhagavad Gita 10.8. The Lord is the original source of all emanations, and everything that is created, maintained, and annihilated exists by the energy of the Lord. The sane man who knows this is actually learned, and therefore he becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Although the reflectory energy of the Lord displays various illusions to the eyes of persons with a poor fund of knowledge, the sane person knows clearly that the Lord can act even from far, far beyond our vision by his different energies, just as fire can diffuse heat and light from a distant place. In the medical science of the ancient sages known as the Ayurveda, there is definite acceptance of the Lord's supremacy in the following words. Jagayoner anichasya chid anandaika rupina pumsosti prakritir nitya pratichayeva basvata achetanapi chaitanya yogena paramatmana akarod vishvam akilam anityam natakakritim. There is one Supreme Person who is the progenitor of this cosmic manifestation and whose energy acts as prakriti, or the material nature, dazzling like a reflection. By such illusory action of prakriti, even dead matter is caused to move by the cooperation of living energy of the Lord, and the material world appears like a dramatic performance to the ignorant eyes. The ignorant person, therefore, may even be a scientist or physiologist in the drama of Prakriti, while the sane person knows Prakriti as the illusory energy of the Lord. By such a conclusion, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, it is clear that the living entities are also a display of the Lord's superior energy, Paraprakriti, just as the material world is a display of the Lord's inferior energy, Aparaprakriti. The superior energy of the Lord cannot be as good as the Lord, although there is very little difference between the energy and the possessor of the energy, or the fire and the heat. Fire is possessed of heat, but heat is not fire. This simple thing is not understood by the man with a poor fund of knowledge, who falsely claims that the fire and heat are the same. This energy of the fire, namely heat, is explained here as a reflection and not directly fire. Therefore, the living energy represented by the living entities is the reflection of the Lord, and never the Lord himself. Being the reflection of the Lord, the existence of the living entity is dependent on the Supreme Lord, who is the original light. Who is the original light. This material energy may be compared to darkness, as actually it is darkness, and the activities of the living entities in the darkness are reflections of the original light. Dhanyavad pranam, Mummy Devi.
Dhanyavad pranam, Prabhuji. Dhanyavad.
The Lord should be understood by the context of this verse. Non-dependence of both the energies of the Lord is explained as Maya, or illusion. No one can make a solution of the darkness of ignorance simply by the reflection of light. Similarly, no one can come out of material existence simply by the reflected light of the common man. One has to receive the light from the original light itself. The reflection of sunlight in the darkness is unable to drive out the darkness, but the sunlight outside the reflection can drive out the darkness completely. In darkness, no one can see things in a room. Therefore, a person in the dark is afraid of snakes and scorpions, although there may not be such things. But in the light, the things in the room can be clearly seen, and the fear of snakes and scorpions is at once removed. Therefore, one has to take shelter of the light of the Lord, as in Bhagavad Gita or in Bhāgavatam, and not the reflective personalities who have no touch with the Lord. No one should hear Bhagavad Gita or Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from a person who does not believe in the existence of the Lord. Such a person is already doomed, and any association with such a doomed person makes the associator also doomed. According to the Padma Purāna, within the material compass there are innumerable material universes, and all of them are full of darkness. Any living being, beginning from the Brahmas, there are innumerable Brahmas in innumerable universes, to the insignificant ant, are all born in darkness, and they require factual light from the Lord to see him directly, just as the sun can be seen only by the direct light of the sun. No lamp or man-made torchlight, however powerful it may be, can help one see the sun. The sun reveals itself. Therefore, the action of different energies of the Lord, or the personality of God in himself, can be realized by the light manifested by the causeless mercy of the Lord. The impersonalists may say that God cannot be seen. God can be seen by the light of God and not by man-made speculations. Here, this light is specifically mentioned as Vidyak, which is an order by the Lord to Brahma. This direct order of the Lord is a manifestation of his internal energy, and this particular energy is the means of seeing the Lord face to face. Not only Brahma, but anyone who may be graced by the Lord to see such a merciful, direct internal energy can also realize the personality of Godhead without any mental speculation. Text 35. Yatha mahanti bhutani bhutesu chavachashanu pravishtanya pravishtani tata teshu na teshvaham. O Brahma, please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created, and at the same time I am outside of everything. Purport. The great elements of material creation, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether, all enter into the body of all manifested entities, the seas, mountains, aquatics, plants, reptiles, birds, beasts, and human beings, demigods, and everyone materially manifested. And at the same time, such elements are differently situated. In the developed stage of consciousness, the human being can study both physiological and physical science, but the basic principles of such sciences are nothing but the material elements and nothing more. The body of the human being and the body of a mountain, as also the bodies of the demigods, including Brahma, are all of the same ingredients, earth, water, etc. And at the same time, the elements are beyond the body. The elements were created first, and therefore they entered into the body construction later. But in both circumstances, they entered the cosmos and also did not enter. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, by his different energies, namely the internal and external, is within everything in the manifested cosmos, and at the same time, he is outside of everything, situated in the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha Loka, as described before. This is very nicely stated in the Brahma Samhita 5.37 as follows. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhis Tabir Yaeva Nijarupatya Kalabihi Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the personality of Godhead Govinda, who by expansion of his internal potency of transcendental existence, knowledge and bliss, enjoys in his own and expanded forms. Simultaneously, he enters into every atom of the creation. This expansion of his plenary parts is also more definitely explained in the same Brahma Samhita 5.35 as follows. Eko Pyusho Ruchaitam Jagaranda Kotim Yachchaktirasti Jagaranda Chayhaya Danta Andantarasam Paramanu Chayantarasam Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the personality of Godhead Govinda, who by one of his plenary portions enters into the existence of every universe and every particle of the atoms, and thus unlimitedly manifests his infinite energy all over the material creation. The impersonalists can imagine or even perceive that the Supreme Brahman is thus all-pervading, and therefore they conclude that there is no possibility of his personal form. Herein lies the mystery of his transcendental knowledge. This mystery is transcendental love of Godhead, and one who is surcharged with such transcendental love of Godhead can without difficulty see the personality of Godhead in every atom and every movable or immovable object. And at the same time, he can see the personality of Godhead in his own abode, Goloka, enjoying eternal pastimes with his eternal associates, who are also expansions of his transcendental existence. This vision is the real mystery of spiritual knowledge, as stated by the Lord in the beginning. Sarahasyam tad angamcha. This mystery is the most confidential part of the knowledge of the Supreme, and it is impossible for the mental speculators to discover by dint of intellectual gymnastics. The mystery can be revealed through the process recommended by Brahmaji in his Brahma Samhita 5.38 as follows. Pramanjana chorita bhakti vilochanena shanta sadhaiva hridayeshi vilokayanti yam sham sundaram achintya gunasvarupam govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the original personality of Godhead, Govinda, whom the pure devotees, their eyes smeared with the ointment of love of Godhead, always observe within their hearts. This Govinda, the original personality of Godhead, is Shyam Sundar, with all transcendental qualities. Therefore, although he is present in every atom, the Supreme Personality of Godhead may not be visible to the dry speculators. Still, the mystery is unfolded before the eyes of the pure devotees because their eyes are anointed with love of Godhead. And this love of Godhead can be attained only by the practice of transcendental loving service of the Lord and nothing else. The vision of the devotees is not ordinary. It is purified by the process of devotional service. In other words, as the universal elements are both within and without, similarly the Lord's name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, etc., as they are described in the revealed scriptures or as performed in the Vaikuntha lokas, far, far beyond the material cosmic manifestation, are factually being televised in the heart of the devotee. The man with a poor fund of knowledge cannot understand, although by material science one can see things far away by means of television. Factually, the spiritually developed person is able to have the television of the kingdom of God always reflected within his heart. That is the mystery of knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So we'll stop reading here for today, and we'll continue this purport to verse 35 on Monday. Before we close, are there any comments from either Uma Devidasi or Shuleka Patra? No? Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai. Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Jai
Jai.
Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Nishringapuri Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Baladev
Jai.
Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai.
Jai.
Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kun
Jai.
Radha Kun Ki Jai. Tulsi
Jai.
Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Jai
Jai.
Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Jai
Jai.
Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Scientific
Jai.
Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Jai
Jai.
Princeton Bhakti Vedanta Institute Ki Jai. Śrī Caitanya
Jai.
Sarasvatī Institute Ki Jai. Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Mutt Ki Jai.
Jai.
Our glories to the assembled devotees, our glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhakti Veda Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Srimati Uma Devi Dasi Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Dhanavad Pranam.
Shri Krishna Keshav Prabhu ki Jai.
Hari Bol. Jai Gurudev. Self-realization in different ways, by karma yoga, by jnana yoga, by dhyana yoga, by raja yoga, by bhakti yoga, etc. To engage in self-realization is the responsibility of every living entity developed in consciousness. One who is developed in consciousness certainly makes inquiries into the mystery of the self, of the cosmic situation, and of the problems of life, in all spheres and fields, social, political, economic, cultural, religious, moral, etc., and in their different branches. But here, the goal of all such inquiries is explained. The Vedānta-sūtra philosophy begins with this inquiry about life, and the Bhāgavatam answers such inquiries up to this point, or the mystery of all inquiries. Lord Brahma wanted to be perfectly educated by the personality of Godhead, and here is the answer by the Lord, finished in 4 nutshell verses, from Aham Eva to this verse, Etavadeva. This is the end of all self-realization processes. Men do not know that the ultimate goal of life is Vishnu, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, due to being bewildered by the glaring reflection and the darkness, and as such, everyone is entering into the darkest region of the material existence, driven by the uncontrolled senses. The world, the whole material existence has sprung up because of our sense gratification, desires based principally on the desire of sex, and the result is that in spite of all advancement of knowledge, the final goal of all the activities of the living entities is sense gratification. But here is the real goal of life, and everyone should know it by inquiries put before a bona fide spiritual master, expert in the science of bhakti yoga, or from a living personality of Bhagavatam life. Everyone is engaged in various kinds of scriptural inquiries, but the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam gives answers to all of the various students of self-realization. This ultimate objective of life is not to be searched out without great labor or perseverance. One who is imbued with such sincere inquiries must ask the bona fide spiritual master in the disciplic succession from Brahmaji, and that is the direction given here. Because the mystery was disclosed before Brahmaji by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the mystery of all such inquiries regarding self-realization must be put before such a spiritual master, who is directly the representative of the Lord, acknowledged in that disciplic succession. Such a bona fide spiritual master is able to clear up the whole thing by evidence from the revealed scriptures, both direct and indirect. Although everyone is free to consult the revealed scriptures in this connection, one still requires the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, and that is the direction in this verse. The bona fide spiritual master is the most confidential representative of the Lord, and one must receive direction from the spiritual master, in the same spirit that Brahmaji received it from the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. The bona fide spiritual master, in that bona fide chain of disciplic succession, never claims to be the Lord himself, although such a spiritual master is greater than the Lord in the sense that he can deliver the Lord by his personally realized experience. The Lord is not to be found simply by education or by good fertile brain, but surely he can be found by the sincere student through the transparent medium of the bona fide spiritual master. The revealed scriptures give directions directly to this end, but because the bewildered living entities are blinded by the glaring reflection in the darkness, they are unable to find the truth of the revealed scriptures. For example, in the Bhagavad Gita, the whole direction is targeted toward the personality of Godhead, Lord Śrī Krishna. But for want of a bona fide spiritual master in the line of Brahmaji or the direct hearer, Arjuna, there are different distortions of the revealed knowledge by many unauthorized persons who just want to satisfy their own whims. Undoubtedly, the Bhagavad Gita is accepted as one of the most brilliant stars in the horizon of the spiritual sky. Yet the interpretations of this great book of knowledge have so grossly been distorted that every student of Bhagavad Gita is still in the same darkness of glaring material reflections. Such students are hardly enlightened by the Bhagavad Gita. In the Gita, practically the same instruction has been imparted as in the 4 prime verses of Bhagavatam. But due to wrong and fashionable interpretations by unauthorized persons, one cannot reach the ultimate conclusion. In Bhagavad Gita 18.61, it is clearly said, Ishvaraha sarva bhutanam hridesharjuna tistati, brahmayan sarva bhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. The Lord is situated in the heart of all living beings as Paramatma, and he is controlling all of them in the material world under the agency of his external energy. Therefore, it is clearly mentioned that the Lord is the supreme controller and that the living entities are controlled by the Lord. In the same Bhagavad Gita, 18.65, the Lord directs as follows, Man manha bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, mam evasyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. It is clear from this verse of Bhagavad Gita that the direction of the Lord is that one should be God-minded, a devotee of the Lord, a worshipper of the Lord, and must offer all obeisances unto Lord Krishna. By so doing, the devotee will undoubtedly go back to Godhead, back home. Indirectly, it is said that the whole Vedic social construction of human society is so made that everyone acts as a part and parcel of the complete body of the Lord. The intelligent class of men, or the brahmanas, are situated on the face of the Lord. The administrative class of men, or the kshatriyas, are situated on the arms of the Lord. The productive class of men, the vaishyas, are situated on the belt of the Lord, and the laborer class of men, the sudras, are situated on the legs of the Lord. Therefore, the complete social construction is the body of the Lord, and all the parts of the body, namely the brahmanas, the kshatriyas, the vaishyas, and the sudras, are meant to serve the Lord's whole body conjointly. Otherwise, the parts become unfit to be coordinated with the supreme consciousness of oneness. Universal consciousness is factually achieved by coordinated service of all concerned to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that alone can ensure total perfection. Therefore, even the great scientists, the great philosophers, the great mental speculators, the great politicians, the great industrialists, the great social reformers, etc., cannot give any relief to the restless society of the material world, because they do not know the secret of success as mentioned in this verse of Bhagavatam, namely, that one must know the mystery of Bhakti Yoga. One must know the mystery of Bhakti Yoga. In Bhagavad Gita 7.15, also it is said, Namam duskrito mudha padyante naradhama mayaya faratagyana asuram bhavam ashrita. Because the so-called great leaders of human society are ignorant of this great knowledge of Bhakti Yoga and are always engaged in ignoble acts of sense gratification, bewildered by the external energy of the Lord, they are stubborn rebels against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they never agree to surrender unto Him because they are fools, miscreants of the lowest type of human beings. Such faithless non-believers may be highly educated in the material sense of the term, but factually they are the greatest fools of the world, because by the influence of the external material nature, all of their so-called acquisition of knowledge has made them null and void. Therefore, all advancement of knowledge in the present context of things is being misused by cats and dogs fighting with one another for sense gratification. And all acquisition of knowledge in science, philosophy, fine arts, nationalism, economic development, religion, and great activities are being spoiled by being used as dresses for dead men. There is no utility in the dresses used for covering a coffin of a dead body, save getting false applause from the ignorant public. The Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam therefore says again and again that without attainment of the status of Bhakti Yoga, all the activities of human society are to be considered absolute failures only. In Bhagavatam 5.5.5 it is said, Parabhavas tavad abodha jato yavanna jigyasata atmatatvam yavat kriyas tavad idam manovai karmatmakam yena sarira bandha. As long as one is blind to inquiring after self-realization, all material activities, however great they may be, are all different kinds of defeat, because the aim of human life is not fulfilled by such unwanted and profitless activities. The function of the human body is to attain freedom from material bondage, but as long as one is fully absorbed in material activities, his mind will be overwhelmed in the whirlpool of matter, and thus he will continue to be encaged in material bodies life after life. Bhagavatam 5.5.6 says, Evammana karma vasam prayunkte avidyayatman upadhahi yamane pratirnayavan mai vasudeve namuchate deha yogena tavat. It is one's mind that generates different kinds of bodies for suffering different kinds of material pains. Therefore, as long as the mind is absorbed in fruitive activities, the mind is understood to be absorbed in nescience, and thus one is sure to be subjected to material bondage in different bodies again and again, until one develops a transcendental love for Godhead, Vasudeva, the Supreme Person. To become absorbed in the transcendental name, quality, form, and activities of the Supreme Person, Vasudeva, means to change the temper of the mind from matter to absolute knowledge, which leads one to the path of absolute realization, and thus frees one from the bondage of material contact and engagements in different material bodies. So we will stop our reading here for today. And before we end, if there are any comments from anybody.
Yes. Can I ask something?
Please, Dr. Sue.
Yes, actually, I have some problem understanding the concept of faith. Like, faith is always, as I understood, it's always attached with some kind of devotion and discipline, because these two things are necessary to have faith, devotion and discipline. But what kind of discipline is required here to have the Krishna Prem, that you will guide me? And there are, in every faith there is a kind of discipline, rules, you can say rules, and to be followed, and to have a kind of state of attachment, and remove from a state of detachment from the material world, and you have to come to a spiritual world. So there is always an obstruction, where you find a desire is something which is a kind of obstruction, is always there. And how to do that, how to get rid of that, that is one thing just finding difficult to have. And there is always a kind of saying, like if we go by Jain philosophy and other things, so they always says that there is two kind of things one can do, that one is Mahabrat and one is Anubrat. So Anubrat is for the people who are staying in the family, still they can maintain a kind of discipline and have faith on God and surrender to God within the family also. Okay, and remove the desires or the negativity within you. That is one thing. And other thing is that as the asceticism or a kind of guru who has realized the state of transcendental reality. So that is another, is Mahabrat. So even if we are in Anubrat, so what are the kind of disciplines we should follow? That is one thing. And the second is that what is the relationship between the God, self and the world? Third thing, that how do you define mind and body? That's my question.
So start with what you were asking about faith, devotion, and discipline. Well, the scriptures tell us that actually faith is required before devotion. It says ado shraddha, right? First comes faith. So once we have faith, it means we have some attraction. It's an initial kind. Of course, faith develops as we engage in devotional activities under the guidance of a Vaishnava, but some attraction, some sincere, heartfelt attraction is necessary just to begin the process of devotion, where the next step is sadhu sangha. And then when we're having sadhu sangha, we're associating with a devotee. Means not just having our body associate. That's not association. Association means hearing the concept that the sadhu is saying, and then actually applying that to our life. And then as we see how the application of the principles that the sadhu has given us, how we see that changes our experience, slowly but surely, from material entanglement to Satchidananda, because that is a practical thing that we will see in our life if we apply the principles of bhakti sincerely, and we really, as much as we can. We're finite, we can't do it by ourselves, of course, but as much as we can, we should try. Then we'll see that devotion is coming that is developing, and faith is growing with that. Now, discipline, of course, is through becoming a disciple. Discipline means we're not just following the whims of our own mind. We are taking the instruction of the bona fide guru, of the bona fide Vaishnava, who has themselves already been disciplined by the bona fide guru. And of course, this whole process is Guru Parampara, which begins with Krishna himself, as we're reading in Bhagavatam just today. So discipline means that we are giving up attachment to following the whims of our own mind, which are always changing like the direction of the wind. And we're taking the instruction and direction and the sweet guidance of Guru instead. That is discipline. And we can only do that if we have that initial faith, that initial attraction to Guru. And then this process of devotion, of sincere devotion, which culminates in Krishna Prem, then this is a dynamic activity. It's not that any of these things necessarily, these don't stop. Faith is growing. The more we associate with the sadhu, the more that our mind is disciplined by following the instruction of Guru. Both devotion and faith are growing. So it's a very dynamic interaction between these three things. So now the second part of your question was about this, how you explained it was Anuvrat and Mahavrat, right? We're in family life. So how does, what do we do? Does it mean we have to completely give up family life and leave everything behind, or is there some middle ground, or so what is the thing? So the thing is, Yukta Vairagya, right? Yukta means union, Vairagya means giving up. So it means we're giving up the lower and we're accepting the higher. Whatever is not, so this is also touching on the principles of Sharanagati. The two of the big ones are rejecting what is not favorable to devotion and accepting what is favorable to devotion. So now, if in our family life, we have the opportunity that our family members, whether or not they are exactly following the principles of bhakti themselves, if still they are supportive of our desire to follow them, and they are respecting that and not trying to force us to try to do what they want to do. Instead, they're giving us that space and encouragement, and in fact, are willing to even be open-minded enough to see that what we are doing is changing our life in a positive way. And then so maybe they will hear something. They will just be open to hearing more, being a little open-minded. If our family life is like that, if it's conducive to devotion, if it's helpful to the development of bhakti, then of course, we don't have to leave that. Grihastha life is a factual, in the Varnashram system, Grihastha life is there, of course. And the associates of Caitanya Mahāprabhu, there is the Pancha Tattva, right? Is Mahaprabhu, is Śrī Krishna Caitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Śrī Advaita, Gadadhar, Śrīvas. Śrīvas Thakur is a Grihastha, is a family man. And he is having Mahaprabhu, when we read Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Śrīvas is having Mahaprabhu and all the devotees come to his house. And they are having huge kirtans. They're even putting on dramas where Mahaprabhu is acting, actually. They're having these dramas and they're having prasadam. And so they're using the family life as a platform to spread Krishna consciousness in a very happy way, in a very loving way. So of course, everything can be used in the devotion of Krishna. However, if we find ourselves in a family life which is very demanding and is taking us away from devotion, then, naturally, based on our sincerity to develop Krishna Prem, then we will reject anything that is not favorable to devotion. Then we will reject family life. But it's not absolutely necessary. It depends on the circumstance. And so your next question was, what is the relationship between the soul, God, and the world? Actually, we have been working on for some time putting together a lot of the writings of Śrīpad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj into a book, which hopefully in the next, sometime in the near future, we'll be able to publish. And the name of the book that Śrīpad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj has given is The Science of Life, Soul, God, and the World. So it's very important. Of course, these are the three main topics of philosophy, as this is what Maharaj had presented, of course. So this is not some kind of pantheism where we are saying God and the world are the same thing. Of course not. God is the absolute supreme being, the ground in which all other finite being participates in. So the world or nature is Bahiranga Shakti, is the external energy of God. Bahiranga Shakti. The soul is Tatastha Shakti, the marginal potency. And then God, everything is a part of God's energy. So we're saying Bahiranga Shakti, Tatastha Shakti. God is Shaktiman, who is the owner and possessor and controller of the Shaktis, all Shaktis. And now, if we're absorbed in the Bahiranga Shakti in the world, because we're on the margin, we can either go outside, external energy, or inside, internal energy, the Antaranga Shakti. So if we're absorbed in the outside in the world, then we are still being controlled by the Lord, but in a manner in which we're not conscious of the Lord's existence, and we think that we are the center, and we're trying to exploit the environment to satisfy our own whims. But if we have enough humility and some sincere, heartfelt attraction towards the reservoir of all of life, the reservoir of pleasure, right? Akila Rasamrita Murti. Krishna is Akila Rasamrita Murti, the reservoir of all pleasure, or the emporium of rasa. So if we have some sukriti to recognize this a little bit, and we have the association of the devotees, then we're being attracted to this Antaranga Shakti, the internal energy of the Lord. So in this way, in very general, we can see that this is the relationship between soul, world, and God. And then the difference between mind and body, and of course, in Western philosophy, mind is kind of an umbrella term for what in Eastern and Vedic philosophy is, very specific concepts. We have manas, ahamkar, buddhi, chit. So of course, those are very different things, because buddhi, ahamkar, and manas they're material. They're subtle material elements. And then of course the gross material elements are the pancha, the five mahabhutas. Yes. Pancha mahabhut. So that's material energy. So once we are already choosing to be self-centered and have our life centered on sense gratification, then the mind comes, the ego, false ego comes, ahamkar, and the intelligence comes to figure out how to exploit that environment. And the body comes based on our karma and guna, which is made out of, Prabhupada was just saying this in the purport. So anyway, the mind and body are coming as a result of guna and karma in the material world. But consciousness, which is aware of all this, Prabhupada is telling, the Vaishnavas are saying, consciousness is a symptom of the soul. So the mind and the body are there, but we can be aware of the mind, we can be aware of our thoughts, we can be aware of our bodily feelings, so that consciousness is higher than both mind and body, right? We can be aware of our thoughts, we can be aware of our desires. That means that consciousness is higher than mind, consciousness is higher than body. So we start to inquire about consciousness, and then we start to recognize consciousness, who is conscious? So then we inquire about the self. And then so now we're on the platform of Vedānta-sūtra, Tato Brahma Jigyasa, who am I? Right? Or Kayami is who am I? And Vedānta-sūtra is starting then Tato Brahma Jigyasa. Now you realize you are a spirit, you must inquire into spirit. So like that, we can understand that mind and body are different, but they're also very similar in that they're both in the material world. I think that's all I can say for today, because Srila Shanta Maharaj is actually about to start his class.
Yes.
So, Jai Om Vishnu
Thank-
Pad Paramahamsa Śrī
Jai
Bhakti
Vishnu
Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Sringapuri Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Guru Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai, Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Jai Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai, Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Princeton Bhakti Vedanta Institute Ki Jai, Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Institute Ki Jai, Śrī Caitanya Sarasvat Mat Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Pramanandi, Hari 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 Bo,
Hare Krishna Keshav
Thank
Prabhu
you so
ki
much.
jai.
Yes, it's okay. A little cold now. Winter is coming. But we'll start the reading. Okay. Dandavat Pranam, Namaste. By the instruction and grace of Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are here reading Canto 2, the Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 9, Text 36. This is the last verse of the Catuḥ-ślokī, and we're continuing Srila Prabhupada's purport from last time. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada therefore comments on the words of Sarvatra Sarvada in the sense that the principles of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service to the Lord are apt in all circumstances, i.e. Bhakti Yoga is recommended in all the revealed scriptures. It is performed by all authorities. It is important in all places. It is useful in all causes and effects, etc. As far as all the revealed scriptures are concerned, he quotes from Skanda Purāna on the topics of Brahma and Narada as follows. Samsaresmin mahagore janma mrityu samakule pujanam vasudevasya tarakam vadhi bismatam. In the material world, which is full of darkness and dangers, combined with birth and death and full of different anxieties, the only way to get out of the great entanglement is to accept loving transcendental devotional service to Lord Vasudeva. This is accepted by all classes of philosophers. Srila Jiva Goswami also quotes another common passage which is found in the three Puranas, namely the Padma Purāna, Skanda Purāna, and Linga Purāna. It runs as follows. Alhodhya sarva shastrani vicharya cha punha puna idam ekam sunishpanam deyo narayana sada. By scrutinizingly reviewing all the revealed scriptures and judging them again and again, it is now concluded that Lord Narayan is the supreme absolute truth, and thus he alone should be worshipped. The same truth is also indirectly described in the Garuda Purāna as follows. Param gato pivedhanam sarva shastrartha vedyapi yona sarveshvare bhaktas tam vidyat purushadhamam. Even though one may have gone to the other side of all the Vedas, and even though one is well versed in all the revealed scriptures, if one is not a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he must be considered the lowest of mankind. Similarly, it is also stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 5.8.12 indirectly as follows. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchan sarvar gunas tatra samashate sura harava bhaktasasya kuto mahadguna manorathena sati tavato bahi. One who has unflinching devotion unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead must have all the good qualities of the demigods, and contrarily, one who is not a devotee of the Lord must be hovering in the darkness of mental speculation. and thus must be engaged in material impermanence. Dhanyavad pranam Umadevi.
Dandavad pranam Prabhuji.
Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11.11.18 says, Shabda Brahmani Nisnato Na Nisnayat Pareyadi Shamastasya Shramafalo Hyadenum Eva Rakshata. One may be well versed in all the transcendental literature of the Vedas, but if he fails to be acquainted with the Supreme, then it must be concluded that all of his education is like the burden of a beast, or like one's keeping a cow without milking capacity. Similarly, the liberty of discharging loving transcendental service to the Lord is invested in everyone, even the woman, the sadhus, the forest tribes, or any other living beings born in sinful conditions. Te vai vedanti atitaranti chadeva mayam Śrī Sudra huna sabara api papai jiva Yadhyadbhuta krama parayana shilas shiksas tiryajana pi kimushuta dharanaye. The lowest of human beings can be elevated to the highest stage of devotional life if they are trained by the bona fide spiritual master, well versed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. If the lowest can be so elevated, then what to speak of the highest, who are well versed in Vedic knowledge? The conclusion is that devotional service to the Lord is open for all, regardless of who they are. That is the confirmation of its application for all kinds of performers of the service. Therefore, the devotional service of the Lord with perfect knowledge through the training of a bona fide spiritual master is advised for everyone, even if one happens not to be a human being. This is confirmed in Garuda Purāna as follows. Kitab pakshi mrganam cha harao sanyasta chetasam urdham eva gatim manye kim punor jnaninam nirnam. Even the worms, birds, and beasts are assured of elevation to the highest perfection of life if they are completely surrendered to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So what to speak of the philosophers amongst the human beings? Therefore, there is no need to seek properly qualified candidates for discharging devotional service to the Lord. Let them be either well-behaved or ill-trained. Let them be either learned or fools. Let them be either grossly attached or in the renounced order of life. Let them be liberated souls or desirous of salvation. Let them be inexpert in the discharge of devotional service or expert in the same. All of them can be elevated to the supreme position by discharging devotional service under the proper guidance. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9.30 and 32 as follows. Api chetsu duracharo Vajate mam anhanyabak sadur eva samantavya samyagpyava sitohisa mamhi partavya pasritya yepishu papayonyaha striyo vaisyas tata sudras tepiyanti param gatim. Even if a person is fully addicted to all sorts of sinful acts, if he happens to be engaged in loving transcendental service of the Lord under the proper guidance, he is to be considered the most perfect holy man, without a doubt. And thus any person whatsoever and whosoever he or she may be, even the fallen woman, the less intelligent laborer, the dull mercantile man, or even a man lower than all these, can attain the highest perfection of life by going back home, back to Godhead, provided he or she takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in all earnestness. This sincere earnestness is the only qualification that can lead one to the highest perfectional stage of life. And until such real earnestness is aroused, there is a difference between cleanliness or uncleanliness, learning or non-learning, in the material estimation. Fire is always fire. And thus, if someone touches the fire knowingly or unknowingly, the fire will act in its own way without discrimination. The principle is, Harir harati papani dushta chitar api smrta. The all-powerful Lord can purify the devotee of all sinful reactions, just as the sun can sterilize all sorts of infections by its powerful rays. Attraction for material enjoyment cannot act upon a pure devotee of the Lord. There are hundreds and thousands of aphorisms in the revealed scriptures. Atmaramascha munya. Even the self-realized souls are also attracted by the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Kichit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana. Simply by hearing and chanting, one becomes a great devotee of Lord Vasudeva. Achalati bhagavat padaravindal lavan dimishardam apisa vaishnava griha. A person who does not move from the lotus feet of the Lord, even for a moment or a second, is to be considered the greatest of all Vaishnavas. Bhagavat parshadhatam prate matsivaya pratitamte. The pure devotees are convinced of attaining the association of the personality of Godhead, and thus they are always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, in all continents, in all planets, in all universes, devotional service to the Lord, or bhakti yoga, is current, and that is the statement of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and allied scriptures. Everywhere means in every part of the creation of the Lord, and the Lord can be served by all the senses, or even simply by the mind. The South Indian Brahmana, who served the Lord simply on the strength of his mind, factually realized the Lord. Success is guaranteed for a devotee who fully engages any one of his senses in the mode of devotional service. The Lord can be served by any ingredient, even the most common commodity, a flower, a leaf of fruit, or a little water, which are available in any part of the universe and without cost. And thus the Lord is served universally by the universal entities. He can be served simply by hearing. He can be served simply by chanting or reading about his activities. He can be served simply by adoring him and accepting him. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that one can serve the Lord by offering the result of one's own work. It does not matter what one does. Generally, men may say that whatever they are doing is inspired by God, but that is not all. One should actually work on behalf of God as a servant of God. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 9.27, Yad karoshi yad asnasi yad juhosi dadasiyat yatapasyasi kaunteya tat kurusva madam arpanam. Do whatever you like or whatever may be easier for you to do. Eat whatever you may eat, sacrifice whatever you can sacrifice, give whatever you may give in charity, and do whatever you may undertake in penance, but everything must be done for him only. If you do business or if you accept some employment, do so on behalf of the Lord. Whatever you may eat, you may offer the same to the Lord and be assured that he will return food after eating it himself. He is the complete whole, and therefore whatever he may eat as offered by the devotee is accepted because of the devotee's love. But again, it is returned as prasad, or for the devotee, so that he can be happy by eating. In other words, be a servant of God and live peacefully in that consciousness, ultimately returning home, back to Godhead. So we'll end here for today. And if there are any comments from anybody, Dhanyavad Pranam Vishram Prabhu.
Dandas Prabhuji, Dandas, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Dandas to all devotees, Hare Kṛṣṇa, very nice Prabhu. I thought I'll make some time from my work schedule and join the meeting. So Catuḥ-ślokī, these are like 4 verses, Prabhu.
Catuḥ-ślokī are the 4 verses in Bhagavatam, verse 33, 34, 35, and 36 in Canto 2, Chapter 9, where Lord Vishnu is telling Lord Brahma the essence of the teachings of the whole Bhagavatam. So this is the purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport to that last verse, and we'll continue it on Friday. We're not finished yet.
Okay, Prabhuji. Just a humble suggestion, Prabhu, because devotees are joining, so maybe you can share the screen when you're reading, they can read along.
You can,
or you can share it.
if you're on your computer, you can pull it up. I can send you the link.
Yeah,
But it's nice to see all the
yeah.
devotees here.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, I have a question. Can you differentiate between what is Gyan Yoga and Bhakti Yoga and Raj Yoga and Karma Yoga? So basically, what is the difference between Gyan Yoga and Bhakti Yoga? Is there any difference?
Yeah, of course, that's a huge topic in Bhagavad Gita. Gyan Yoga is mental speculation. You're trying to know, Gyan Yoga is trying to know Brahman ultimately. Just trying to have knowledge of the absolute. There's no desire to serve the Lord, no desire to engage in loving activities of service with the Lord and the devotees. You only want knowledge to satisfy your mind, and the only difference is that you want absolute knowledge, but still the heart is not attracted to service. Still, it's a self-centered desire. So Bhakti Yoga is the shift from self-centered to God-centered. You give up your selfish inclination in order to serve what is the source of the self.
See, can they exist independently? Like suppose I'm a Jnani Yogi, so it so can I be independent of Bhakti Yoga? Like when you go for a Bhakti Yoga, do you need any kind
Bhakti
of
Yoga means recognizing that nothing is independent. If we're thinking independence is existing, then we can go on like that, but then we'll always be in Maya. We'll always be suffering karma and guna because we think we're independent. And the Lord gives us the opportunity to make that mistake, but then we'll always have to suffer for that.
Like in Bhagavad Gita, there is a synthesis of all yogas, like so Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Raj Yoga. Basically, 4 types of yogas they speak in the Bhagavad Gita. And there is a synthesis. They are trying to make a synthesis between all 4. So, but sometimes when you go for Bhakti, I believe that you don't need a kind of, yes, ultimately that you can say knowledge of absolute reality. The kind of knowledge is there, Gyan is there. And, but no, yes, I kind of, what I just really confused. Then when you do the karma, sometimes certain things are independently, they can exist. But again, as you said, that mental label, all these things are coexist together. Like karma, bhakti, and the jnana, and also the Rajya. What do you thought about that? Because ultimately
It's a
that you are
progression.
going.
Bhagavad Gita gives a progression. So out of the Lord's mercy, and he's being well aware that the jiva souls have their own desires and they want to enjoy independently of him. He knows that. He knows. So he's being very merciful and giving levels. So for those who can't accept anything beyond fruitive activity, he gives them karma yoga. He says, sure, you want to do work, you want to receive reward for your work, then do that. But remember me. Try to remember me if you can. Instead of thinking, oh, I'm working to satisfy myself, oh, I'm working to just provide for my family, at least you try to think of me and remember me, and you offer these activities to me. And then you go on in your work, and you'll make some spiritual progress that way. So that's one level, karma yoga. But then he says the next step, one step forward, is then jnana yoga. Do you want to renounce all of that karmic activity and you want to just meditate upon Brahman? Okay, you can do that too. You try to remember that Brahman is the energy of Bhagavan. You try to always connect things back to Krishna. But you want to enjoy yourself by meditating on Brahman instead of being engaged in karmic activity? No problem, you can do that too. And then one step beyond Jnana Yoga, okay, so you don't want to renounce everything, and you don't want to be in karmic activity, but you want to actively control the senses and actively control the mind and see Paramatma in the heart, so you can feel some satisfaction in that way, then you can do that. Very nice. Please just try to remember me in that process. So that, and then one step beyond Bhakti Yoga. Oh, you're ready to give up all exploitation and renunciation. You're ready to stop just trying to enjoy yourself in so many different ways. You're ready to surrender unto me and to give up all types of religiosity. Sarva dharmam parityaga, mamekam sharanam vraja, mama aham svam tarva papebhyo mokshashyami masucha. You're ready to do that, Bhakti Yoga? Oh, very nice. Thank you. You know, here's how to do that. So he's very merciful the whole time. Whatever the soul wants to do, he's saying, you do that. Whatever you want to do, you do that. Just try to remember me. And so he's giving it like this, you know. So it's very nice in that way.
No, what I'm trying to see that you are in a state, suppose take that you are guru and you have realized, when you have realized the Krishna Tattva or Krishna Prem. So what I mean to say that you have crossed, you have now the core yoga with you. Like to achieve some kind of Tattva is unless and until you have the state of 4 things in your mind, you cannot achieve that. Like suppose you are not in a jnana in a transcendental form, karma in a transcendental form, bhakti in a transcendental form, and yoga in a transcendental form, and then you cannot achieve. That is what I meant to say, is that like now you have achieved that state. Is something different from what we are doing. I try to understand, because I feel that without Gyan, then bhakti is also incomplete, because I don't have the spiritual knowledge, then I cannot have the Krishna Tattva. And when I talk about the karma, karma is not ordinary karma in a sadharan karma, what we do in the daily life. So you are not doing that. You are in a higher state. And even also in the Raj Yoga, you are in a higher state of Samadhi. So all things are in a state of equilibrium, and that's why you have achieved something which we do not have. So I want to, so my feeling is that when somebody comes to a state of Krishna Tattva, so all these yogas are there in the mind so that you can achieve that. Because if something is wrong, in the equilibrium is disbalanced, so then you cannot achieve that state. That's my understanding. You got it, what I'm trying to say?
Sure. But this is the problem when we're trying to take too much of an intellectual approach. It's all speculation. Bhakti
No,
can only
it's
be
not
known,
intellectual. It's not, it's a faith.
but so we're trying to maintain so many ideas of karma, gyan, and Raja Yoga. That's all mind. Bhakti only comes from bhakti, through actually engaging in service, not thinking about what bhakti could mean in relation to karma, gyan, and Raja Yoga, and then, oh, bhakti must be everything all together. There's so much just mind games that we're playing on ourselves. Bhakti means doing service, being humble, listening to the direction of Guru, and engaging in that in whatever way we can. Even if we can't do so much, we try our best with our sincere effort, and we just try to do that for the one single purpose of pleasing a Vaishnava, not for trying to grab some understanding for ourselves so we feel fulfilled because we have the intellectual capacity to understand reality in a very deep way, and we feel very, we feel good about that. We understand all the karma, we understand all the gyan, we understand all the mystic yoga, and now we understand bhakti too, and we feel very good about that. No, that's not the mood of bhakti at all. The mood of bhakti is only we want to satisfy the desire of a Vaishnava. So in that mood, I have to end the reading because Srila Shanta Maharaj is having his program, and I don't want to infringe upon that. So
thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sahu, Uma Devidasi Vishwaramar Prabhu. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Nishringa Puri Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Dhruv Ki Jai, Ganga Mai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan, Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai, Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Jai Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Jai Princeton Bhakti Vedānta Institute Ki Jai, Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Institute Ki Jai, Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Mat Ki Jai, Sama Bhakti Veda Vrinda Ki Jai, glories to the worldwide devotees, or glories to the assembled devotees. Nittai Gaur Pramanandi, Hari 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 Bol.
Shri Krishna Prabhu Ki Jai.
Jai Gurudev. One need not be anxious to propitiate each and every demigod and goddess, because the root of all of them is the personality of Godhead. As by pouring water on the root of a tree, one serves and enlivens all the branches and leaves, so by rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, one automatically serves every god and goddess without extraneous effort. The Lord is all-pervading, and therefore service unto him is also all-pervading. Dandavat Pranam Uma Devi. This fact is corroborated in the Skanda Purāna as follows. Archite Deva Deveshe Shankha Chakra Gadadare Archita Sarva Devasyor Yata Sarva Gato Hari. When the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, who carries in his hands a conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower, is worshipped, certainly all other demigods are worshipped automatically, because Hari, the personality of Godhead, is all-pervading. Therefore, in all cases, namely nominative, objective, causative, dative, ablative, possessive, and supportive, everyone is benefited by such transcendental loving service to the Lord. The man who worships the Lord himself who is worshipped, the cause for which the Lord is worshipped, the source of supply, the place where such worship is done, etc. Everything is benefited by such an action. Even during the annihilation of the material world, the process of bhakti yoga can be applied. Kalena nasta palaya vaniyam. The Lord is worshipped in devastation, because he protects the Vedas from being annihilated. He is worshipped in every millennium or yuga, as it is said in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 12.3.52. Kriteya dhyayato vishnam, tretyam yajato makahi, vapare paricharyayam, kalota dhari kirtanat. In the Vishnu Purāna it is written, Sahanistan mahachchidram, Samohasa cha vibrama yanmuritam chanam vapi vasudevam nachintayat. If even for a moment remembrance of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is missed, that is the greatest loss. That is the greatest illusion. And that is the greatest anomaly. The Lord can be worshipped in all stages of life. For instance, even in the wombs of the mothers of Maharaj Prahlad and Maharaj Parikshit, they worship the Lord. Even in his very childhood, at the age of only 5 years, Dhruva Maharaj worshipped the Lord. Even in full youth, Maharaj Ambarish worshipped the Lord. And even at the last stage of his frustration in old age, Maharaj Dhritarashtra worshipped the Lord. Ajamila worshipped the Lord even at the point of death, and Chitraketu worshipped the Lord even in heaven and in hell. In the Nrsimha Purāna, it is said that as the hellish inhabitants began to chant the holy name of the Lord, they began to be elevated from hell towards heaven. Durvasa Muni has also supported this view. Uchityanamya udite narakopi. Simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, the inhabitants of hell became released from their hellish persecution. So the conclusion of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, as given by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit, is Etannirvidyamananam ichihatam akuto bayam yoginam nripanirnitam harer namanu kirtanam. O king, it is finally decided that everyone, namely those in the renounced order of life, the mystics and the enjoyers of fruit of work, should chant the holy name of the Lord fearlessly to achieve the desired success in their pursuits. Bhagavatam 2.1.11. Similarly, as indicated indirectly in various places in revealed scriptures, one, even though one is well versed in all the Vedas and scriptures, if one is not a devotee of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, he is considered to be the lowest of mankind. 2. In the Garuda Purāna, Brihanaridiya Purāna, and Padma Purāna, the same is repeated. What is the use of Vedic knowledge and penances for one who is devoid of devotional service to the Lord? 3. What is the comparison of thousands of Prajapatis to one devotee of the Lord? 4. Shukadeva Goswami said in Bhagavatam 2.4.17 that neither the ascetic, nor one who is greatly munificent, nor one who is famous, nor the great philosopher, nor the great occultist, nor anyone else can achieve the desired result without being engaged in the service of the Lord. 5. Even if a place is more glorious than heaven, if there is no glorification of the Lord of Vaikuntha or his pure devotee, it should at once be quitted. 6. The pure devotee refuses to accept all the 5 different types of liberation in order to be engaged in the service of the Lord. The final conclusion, therefore, is that the glories of the Lord must be always and everywhere proclaimed. One should hear about his glories, one should chant about his glories, and one should always remember his glories, because that is the highest perfectional stage of life. As far as fruit of work is concerned, it is limited to an enjoyable body. As far as yoga is concerned, it is limited to the acquirement of mystic power. As far as empiric philosophy is concerned, it is limited to the attainment of transcendental knowledge. And as far as transcendental knowledge is concerned, it is limited to the attainment of salvation. Even if they are adopted, there is every chance of discrepancies in discharging the particular type of functions. But adoption of the transcendental devotional service of the Lord has no limit, nor is there fear of falling down. The process automatically reaches the final stage by the grace of the Lord. In the preliminary stage of devotional service, there is an apparent requisite for knowledge, but in the higher stage, there is no necessity of such knowledge. The best and guaranteed path of progress is therefore engagement in bhakti yoga, pure devotional service. The cream of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in the foregoing 4 shlokas is sometimes squeezed out by the impersonalist for different interpretations in their favor. But it should be carefully noted that the 4 shlokas were first described by the personality of Godhead himself, and thus the impersonalist has no scope to enter into them, because he has no conception of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the impersonalist may squeeze out any interpretations from them, but such interpretations will never be accepted by those who are taught in the disciplic succession from Brahma, as will be cleared up in the following verses. Besides that, the Shruti confirms that the supreme truth, absolute personality of Godhead, never reveals himself to anyone who is falsely proud of his academic knowledge. The Shruti mantra clearly says in the Katha Upanishad 1.2.23, Nayam Atma pravachanena labhyo, na medhaya na bahudha shrutena, yam evaisha vrunute tena labhyas, tasyaisatma vivrunute tanum svam. The whole matter is explained by the Lord himself, and one who has no approach to the Lord in his personal feature can rarely understand the purport of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam without being taught by the Bhagavatas, the disciplic succession, without being taught by the Bhagavats in the disciplic succession. So we will end our reading here today. This is the end of the Catuḥ-ślokī of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. If there are any comments from Srimati Uma Devi Dasi or from Bhavana Gulati, please feel free to say something.
Thanks, Prabhu. No any comments.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Shripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Guru Dev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Nrsimhapuri Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gangamayi Yamuna Mayi Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shyam Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai.
Jai.
Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Bhagavatam Catuḥ-ślokī Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai.
Jai.
Scientific Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai.
Jai.
Adivas of the Avirbhav Mahamahotsav of Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrabhakacharya Sri Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Mat Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Princeton Bhakti Vedānta Institute Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Śrī Caitanya Sarasvatī Institute Ki Jai.
Jai.
Our glories to the assembled devotees, our glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhakti Veda Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Nitai Gaur Pramanandi Hari Hari Hari
Hari
Bol.
Hari Bol.
Dhanavad Pranam.
Sripad Krishna Keshav Prabhu ki jai.